Hi, Herb. Thank you for joining me today. I'm so excited that you agreed to get interviewed. As most of our audience knows, we're taking some time to get to know some of our members and some of the industry experts out there. And I'd love for you to start off with just sharing a little bit about yourself to our members.
Well, I'd be happy to do that, Donna. I'm glad that we have gotten to know each other, and I'm really pleased to be associated, with your music and medicine and machines meetup. And
We're excited to have you.
but the I was reminded of an experience I had that it was a collaborative experience, also at a difficult time, and it involved technology, but it involved music, and that was with the country of Estonia. They have a broadcasting station that features not only classical and jazz, but occasionally what they call eclectic music. And I had just learned, well, actually, for about 7 years, I had been making music mixes tapes, and these were very elaborate. They told stories. They were 90 minutes long, each one of them, and they used different genres of music together, one after another, to tell a story. And there was, the way I did it at that time, there was no narration. They just the combinations told their own story. But when I came to by accident meet the director of this wonderful radio station in Estonia. Estonia is in the Baltic, by the way.
It's good that you share that with people, because I didn't know where it was when you first told me.
That's up north, and in fact, the southern shore of the Baltic. If you start out in Germany and go eastward, then you go through Poland, and then you go through Lithuania, and then through Latvia and up into Estonia, which is a little country compared to the last two, but all three of them make up the Baltic: Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. And my own father was born in Lithuania, but I didn't know anything about the Baltic. We never really talked about it. He came over to Minnesota when he was a year old with his father and mother. And he had his own ambitions about being a people's lawyer, but I won't go into that. But it did inspire me in terms of doing social things, things that helped society and that were interesting in society, that brought out beauty and people's dreams and ambitions to help each other and to grow individually. So the radio station invited me to play. It surprised me. I didn't expect it. I just gave them a sample to listen to for their own benefit. But they said, we'd like to play this for our audience, all 90 minutes. It'll be your show. It won't be our show. And they said, is that all right with you? And I said, oh, yes, it's all right with me. I mean, this was my first public, playing of these. Before then, I had just given them to my friends as I made them. And so here I was giving them to a whole new set of friends, which was the country of Estonia. And at that time, I had just been working to learn how to do these, not on tapes, but on CDs. This was in the year 2000. And so they played it, and a lot of people listened to the broadcast and liked it, and the newspapers wrote it up. There was a media column on how wonderful it was that these people, in other words, myself and the radio station staff, especially the director, could work together just through the internet, through email, in order to create jointly a program. I mean, it was my program, but they did editing of it, and they added, little touches that they like to do to programs. And so
yeah, I enjoyed listening to some of your recordings when you shared them with me. Yeah.
I'm glad. It can be exciting, and there were very exciting moments that we reached in the music. And so the one that main one I sent to you was called Winter Garden, and it had to do
Yes, that's right.
with 9/11. And so here, there, technology and art was being used to help a country like Estonia feel less fearful, because they were worried what was happening to the United States, especially New York, which they uh, emulated. They wanted to be like New York in spirit and in artistic achievements. They were a crossroads culture. You know, they had several different empires that they had been part of. The Swedish and the Russians being the main ones. So I learned something very special about collaboration in both technology and art, you know, and society, just from the experience of working with them. And they said, don't just do 1 or 2 programs, like do 10 or 12. I mean, every month, you know, do a different one. And then they invited me to come and see the country, and they interviewed me as to how what I thought of the country, and we had a wonderful conversation about that. My wife was with me, and it was very special experiencing another country from the inside and really in a way feeling part of it.
Well, tell us a little bit about a little bit more of the technology and medicine background that you have too, because you literally embody the name of our meetup, and that's why I am so fascinated with you, Herb, because you you are an eclectic guy that's done areas in music, medicine, and machines.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I always wanted to deal in some way with society, whether it was being a sociologist or a historian or a social reformer or you know, something of that sort, or creating innovations for society. And so I didn't know quite how to do it, and I latched onto the computer field after I graduated college as a way of doing that. I didn't know where it was going to take me. I wasn't looking for computers for, for themselves at first, but I was interested in how people used computers and how they felt about it and what kind of tools they really wanted to have and how to have a dialogue with them about that. And so I worked for the initially the Port Authority of New York, which runs the tunnels and bridges and airports and the World Trade Center. And so I worked on a World Trade Center project for the foundation walls. And then I worked for several other companies doing cutting edge projects where they really needed some special minds. By that I mean not people who were brilliant in one thing, but people who could be flexible and resourceful to see how to put things together and do a good job of that, and then work with people to make it a success to use. Okay, so so with that background, then so many years later, I started to 7 or 8 years ago with a group at a hospital in New York, Mount Sinai Beth Israel, and they had a group called Music and Medicine because
I promise, Herb, that we didn't steal the name. I didn't even know about the group before I started the meetup.
it's a pretty, it was called actually the Louis Armstrong Center for Music and Medicine. So you're clear ground. Pretty unique name. And and this was these were people who had worked with Louis Armstrong, the musician, the jazz musician in America, and before he died, in some cases, and others afterward, you know, taking his foundation that he left to help people, and so they made a center that used music therapy to help. Initially, it was musicians who were ill.
Oh, okay.
This was interesting. And then they created, special instruments in some cases to help people regain they had a graduated set of things like flutes that
Oh, interesting.
yeah, in other words, initially, if you didn't have that much lung strength, you'd use the lowest one, the simplest, and then it would go from there to ones that
Oh,
more and more.
you
So
mean you guys were teaching some of the patients how to use these new instruments?
how to use it, how to go through a graduated set of instruments to get their breath strength back.
Oh, interesting. Oh.
So in other words, we were working in their medium, their environment of music.
Oh, okay. Neat.
In case, the technology were using tools of musical instruments creatively, either by creating new ones or getting special ones, or just using
Yeah.
regular ones, but using them in new ways. And then we would train people from other countries as well as the United States how to do this music medicine work. There'd be
Yeah.
internships. People would come to us for a year or two and learn. And so it was a very integrated group in terms of all the things, the activities they got to do. They would help out in whatever was needed, as well as getting the main training. And so at the meetings of the society, we would meet several times a year, and if we talk about fundraising and talk about issues, you know, where did the center want to go? What was the next step for them to what to add as, you know, new offerings? And some of the musicians would accompany us in the beginning, you know, to set the tone before we began the meeting, you know, by playing, you know, for 10 or 15 minutes on a guitar and a piano, let's say, and reflecting some of the things they learned in some of their music therapy lessons, some things that derived from that. So it was really integrated in all of the strands that we were doing at the center. And at the center, the other members, the people sitting beside me at these meetings, would be doctors and musicians, jazz musicians, classical musicians, and even people like doctors who themselves were jazz musicians in their spare time. So
It's amazing that there are so many people that have that integrated interest. And I don't think, though, I think you would agree with me, you don't need a PhD or MD to know how much music is a uniting force across all societies and races and types of people. Just brings so much joy, and I'm not surprised. Good health, right? And leverage for therapy.
it's healing and it's enlivening. I learned that myself in working with the people in the diagnostic radiation, you know, for cancer patients, and they had to.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just simply to relax people. You know, there's a lot of situations where you need that, but there are other situations where you need a combination of things. And so in the diagnostic, in a 45-minute session in an MRI, let's say, for diagnostics, at certain times you want them to relax. At other times you want them to be very alert and ready to follow instructions and do something, turn over or do something else. So the music becomes a guide for people for how to behave in this diagnostic environment and in the flow of work that's going to be done in it, and makes them feel at home more. Knowing what
Yeah, I mean, one could say that 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 COVID, right, has the same type of elements in uniting the world around, you know, the challenges in healthcare and our society at large. With you being in New York, tell me a little bit about how you've been holding up in this crisis.
Oh, well, it's in spite of the tremendous problems we have, you know, in terms of the hospital capacity and stuff that developed in New York, I mean, that's in the background. So in the foreground, I've been holding up well to when I feel anxious about things or concerned about the future. There's things that that I remember that make me feel more interested in what I'm doing at the moment and make me feel secure. And so I've found several different things to include as a diet, as it were, in each day.
Oh, I love that. You found your own cure, right? That's great. What have you been doing?
Yeah, well, okay. So breakfast is very important. I usually wake up before my wife, and so I'm out in the living room. There's a dining room table out there, and the first thing that I do is I put on music on a CD player.
Of course.
And sometimes it's John Coltrane, and sometimes it's Chopin. Sometimes it's an artist from 40 years ago, Gordon Lightfoot, who is, you know, singer-songwriter from Canada. I have a number of his albums, and then there are, I have a large collection, and so every week
I could see that from just your background, all the CDs.
These columns, and I have about 11 of these columns around the house.
Oh, wow.
There's 8 more in other rooms, and they're, you know, by category, and so I have I like to do what I call eclectic music, which is music that is from different genres, and so I've got you know, my jazz, I have my world music and classical, and I separate the classical. There's American and there's European. It's a nice distinction. And American music is interesting. It's some of the more recent people, and the European music tends to be older, you know, in the Baroque or classical period. But I have my little special collections too, all of my Estonian music and Baltic music,
Yeah.
which was given to me, you know, or which I bought, you know.
I bet it was easy for you to come up with 9 hours of programming.
It actually, it was. I was so, I got so much in the habit of how to approach a new piece of music and a new theme, and then what kind of music to look for and how to treat it, and, you know, yeah, sometimes I would say, okay, this piece of music goes at the beginning and this piece of music goes at the end, and
Cool.
how do we get here? You know.
Well, before we run out of time, Herb,
Sure.
could you tell the members a little bit about the book that you're writing? Are you able to share?
Yes, oh, I'd be happy to. Yeah, yeah. I've been based on a lot of the research that I've done over the years. Okay, in both in markets and in theoretical academic psychological things. The I okay, let me just say that in around 1980, I was a forecaster of the personal computer market, where it would go when it started. And so I was predicting 1985 and 1990, and most of my predictions turned out to be accurate. And that amazed me. I didn't expect that. I was hoping for it. So I began to update that every 5 or 10 years. I would say, well, what's coming next? And I would take longer stretches. What's going to be 10 and 20 years from now? And so when I started writing my book, I said, I want to take a 40-year stretch. And what are a number of things that are going to...
Yeah.
And so what I saw that was at the center, in my own view, that was coming, based on what had come before at its essence, was something that another person wrote as humans seeking to realize their true self. In other words, people finding out what their own individual self, their own individual characteristics was. The theme of the book is how is this going to come about? And the way that that I did it was to say that there were four kinds of things that were going to influence it. There was the importance of the individual, and then there was the importance of values, and I went into detail on values like tolerance and compassion, and these were going to be put into computer systems by the designers more and more, and it's already happened in social robots, with the putting in characteristics of empathy, and the next one, the third section of the book has to do with the new tools, and it goes into technology, and it goes into conceptual tools, and it talks about fractals and some mathematics called quaternions, and explains what these things are. Just gives a simple, explanation, but says this is on the map, in the future, and here's how it can be used and what will come of it, in my opinion. And the fourth has to do with markets, and the markets are once an individual knows a lot about their own characteristics, they're going to be look to make changes in things and to want to get specialized goods, like personalized or customized things to help better to develop themselves. And so that will produce, in my opinion, a great deal of wealth for those who look to serve those markets. And I think that those markets will emerge, and some other forecasters, including the Royal Bank of Canada, thinks that the personalized markets are going to be a very important part of the future. So that's what the book is about. It's about how we develop ourselves and how society helps us do that.
Sounds incredible. I'm excited that you're part of our meetup community, and I certainly hope that we'll finally get to meet in person, and the rest of our meetup members can get a chance to get to know you better, Herb, because we could talk forever, because you have so many areas that are so fascinating. And I want to thank you for taking this time, and hopefully we could book some more time with you to dig into that book a little bit.
That would love to do that. I've really enjoyed this session, and I hope it interests other people in what are all the ways things can be done with music, medicine, and machines.
Absolutely. Okay. Thanks, Herb. Have a good one. See ya.
Here.